Welcome to the Energy Sovereignty Project and our closeout for the month of May. This is going to follow our usual format. Well, in this case, we'll be doing 31 days in 32 minutes. The only thing that I have to add for this time is that on the 26th, we've split our notes into two sections. So be sure if you are skipping ahead to avoid listening to me blather on, that you go ahead and pause on the 26th in the middle of the end there to get both of those notes. So let's get to it. Alrighty, well, starting off obviously May 1st, we're still in zombie apocalypse mode from the tail end of April, and good production day there, nice sunny day. Got a total solar day percentage creeping on up, 60.3 kilowatt hours of production. And again, operating with the grid disconnected. Notes here, just general vehicle data. Again, vehicles topped off. And then the second, starting off today at 81%. And again, you can see our new symbol there, showing that we have sent power to the grid that day. AC is on. This is the time of year when we start seeing the AC, and this is just showing our little new symbol there. Like I said, this time of year is when the AC starts to come on a bit more, and our daily average use increases to the point where we usually see it in that 30 to 40 kilowatt hour a day range. And again, delivering to the grid, total solar day percentage hit 100. 14 kilowatts to the car. $39 kilowatt hour total. We're still not using a lot of AC yet. You'll see that start to creep up a little bit more towards the end of the month. And then the notes. And then the fourth, again, bit of power to the grid. No place to put it. Actually, this day I believe I wasn't home. At least not while the solar was producing. And that outlines the trip that I made. And then the fifth. Again, very good production. AC creeping up, not much driving though. Even with the cloudy weather, wound up with 61.9. And then the notes, nothing to the vehicle that day. Just happens that way sometimes. I work late and then the charge carries over to the next day. And as you see in the notes, we've got some rain forecast. The overcast was pretty good this day, so we only got 44.5 kilowatt hours of production, but it was still enough to give us a considerable contribution. Starting the day at 39% system charge and ending at 78. Decent amount of charge back to the vehicle. I should probably write some music for this in the future. Come up with something that's not too annoying. And then here we have the 7th. Good production day, 60.8 kilowatt hours. Shot a bit to the grid. Just under 6 kilowatt hours to the grid. And the notes. Yeah, we still managed a decent amount of driving for the month, but on a whole, I probably don't drive as much as most of you guys do, and so you'll just have to kind of factor that in, subtracting the amount of miles that you see here from what you do, and then factoring in how much we send to the grid to see if such a system would have covered your needs. And then May 8th, decent amount of driving. Notes. And one thing that dawned on me here, I should probably close out each of these monthly updates with a page showing the average for how much driving was done and what the monthly stats are. And so as we close this out, I will edit those in there. And this was our maintenance day. Wound up losing our inverter. Again, heads up, kudos to SunWorks. They did a great job of being Johnny on the spot there and getting right out there to get that taken care of. And then May 10th, Starting the day at 31%. We didn't actually lose a whole lot of time the previous day. We actually managed to even be able to put some into the battery, but this still made the 10th a recovery day. Good production, 60.4 kilowatt hours. No grid contribution today, though. Obviously we're still trying to recover from the previous day. And the interesting thing about that 31% to start off with is that even if the crew had not been able to come and repair the inverter, we still would have been able to get through one more day. Again, just some notes about the follow-up from that previous heavy day of driving, and then we get to the 11th. Another fairly heavy day of driving. This month, early in the month, I had gone back and forth to the Bay Area several times, and that ate up some driving miles. Managed to raise our total number of miles driven. I believe in a previous video I did that calculation out, was somewhere around what was it, 1,300 miles? 32 kilowatt hours to the vehicle, rest of the vehicle data. And so as you see in the notes here, this is that day that I had a rapid turnaround, and there simply wasn't enough time to restore power to the vehicle. And so then on the return trip, you'll see here, you'll see the supercharger. I was able to get there under sunlight from the house, but I wasn't able to get back, so I had to supercharge once I arrived in Sausalito, and then return home on the amount of power I had pulled in from the supercharger. Notes. Once I returned home, I put a quick 13 kilowatt hours into the car, just to make sure that you obviously so you don't want to leave it completely depleted. And then the 13th, partly cloudy, still managed to get a decent amount of production. 20 kilowatt hours to the vehicle, again trying to replenish from the depletion. Not a lot of driving. And the notes. Not a whole lot of drama for this week. Just a lot of sunny weather. And the 14th. Again, partly cloudy, but still, owing to the time of the year, we've got the length of the days really extending. As you can see, we're starting production around 6 in the morning, ending around 8 in the evening. Total contribution, even on a cloudy day here, we wound up with 51.8. And again, a lot of this depends greatly on the forecast and the amount of cloud cover that you get on any given day. Here's the notes. And so as you notice in the notes here, you know, that was an interesting thing, that because we had recovered by several small charges on the car, I think that what we're seeing here with the battery relaxing was still related to that recovery of the vehicle. And so I actually left the vehicle after charging it, but it wound up actually the battery relaxed and actually increased its charge overnight, which was interesting. Not by much, a couple percent, but still it was interesting, worth noting. And then here we got some rain creeping in. It affected our daily production, wound up going down to 23.3, which, as it turns out, was enough basically to cover the home usage. And this is where the forecast comes into play when you're deciding on what you want to leave the system at for a total solar day percentage. In this case, we were shooting for 40. I overshot that a little bit, wound up hitting 39, no big deal. And on the 16th, a little more rainy weather. Decent contribution, 36.2 kilowatt hours. A lot of your contribution percentage will depend on at what time of the day the clouds hit, the rain hits. Sometimes you get lucky and it rains in the morning or evening and then leaves that production period from 11 to 2 more or less open. And the notes. So now we see here, you see I was going out of town, and so needed to bump a little bit to the vehicle. And then this is, I believe, where I made my little boo-boo. And then we have the 17th. So then I messed up a bit on the 18th when I came back trying to monitor the charge in the system while I was recharging the vehicle. That didn't work out so well. 17th, and the notes. And the 18th here. Wound up screwing up that a little bit. Taking too much out. Wound up leaving the total solar day at 5%. The system had actually wound up going to 0. That 5% actually represents the recovery. So the system had managed to recover to about 5%, and that obviously was not going to get us through the entire day. Very angry with myself that I let that happen. Also, you'll notice the red 5 kilowatt hours at the top. That was that little bump that I needed to make it home from supercharging. I had enough power in the system to actually have charged at that time, but didn't have time before I had to leave. And here's the 19th, and obviously you see the result of that charge that we took the previous day. Taking too much hurt us. So we wound up with starting the day at 0%, and that's because we had taken 5.4 kilowatt hours from the grid. It's embarrassing this time of year. And the notes, still beating myself up for it. 20th. Starting that recovery period, 5%, starting the total solar day of 32. And the notes. Kilowatt hours to the vehicle. And the notes for the 21st. Not much here other than just the vehicle data. Pretty self-explanatory. And the 22nd, another rainy day. Decent production though, 54.9. Enough so that we could justify 29 kilowatt hours to the vehicle. And again, that forecast tells us then that we'll be able to draw down entirely if we need to. Sometimes, though rain is forecast, the amount of cloud cover will be enough so that we can be assured that we'll have at least a decent contribution to cover the home needs. And then the 23rd. And again, as you can see here, partly cloudy, but because of the forecast percentage for that day, then we were able to be confident that we would get a decent amount of production today. And we did. Didn't put any charge into the vehicle again, as often happens, working late. And then the 24th. It was a pretty cloudy day. But again, those clouds come in at early morning or late in the evening, and then you still wind up with a pretty decent production. In this case, 62.4 kilowatt hours, so the overcast nature of the day didn't really hurt us too much. Did two sessions of charging on the 24th, and then we have the 25th. Again, sending some power out to the grid, actually a decent amount of power out to the grid, 20 kilowatt hours. And again, I don't do a lot of driving. In this case, I had a couple of decent days of driving, 63.9. But still, what you can do is you can take that amount that we're sending to the grid, and if you're a multi-car family, you can add that power to what you would have available to you in this instance. Again, the notes kind of outlining the day. I try to add notes where I can, where the days either reflect something interesting that happened that day, or sometimes just where the days reflect what I feel is kind of a normal situation, you know, where something that everyone would expect to have happen every once in a while. You know, you see here, a friend of mine came by. He had an electric vehicle. He came from out of town. We hung out for the day, and I'm not gonna tell him he needs to go someplace else to charge. And so for that day, it was kind of neat. We got to become a two-car family. And again, this is that day I was telling you about at the beginning of the notes. We're going to split this into two sections here, so you may need to pause this right here to read these notes, because this is only going to be on for another few seconds. And then we finish up with the graph for the day, showing what happened, and the craziness, all of that occurs when you have all of the contributions shown there. It's really interesting to see how the day looked, to the system. And so then on the 27th, things kind of return to normal. Again, just not doing a lot of driving here, guys. The studio is fairly close to the home, and on this day the home usage even was really low. We get into this time of year, it's really strange, and like I said here, we show on the notes here, we got some overcast weather, and so it just absolutely neutralized the temperature. And so for the entire day, I included the AC thing on there because I think it kicked on, once for a little while, but it just didn't come on for any appreciable amount of time or really do anything to the house, because the entire day it spent at 74 degrees. And so then here, again, not a whole lot of driving. At least this might represent something like what most of you are doing. But now we peak the system out and wound up starting to send power to the grid. Not a whole lot today. Wound up using a decent amount at the home, even though it was still lower than what we normally see. Just like in the notes here say, it's just really mild temperatures this time of year. Obviously later on in the year in Sacramento here, it'll probably heat up, and then that's an interesting thing too that we'll get an opportunity to show, and that is that when the solar panels get hot, they lose efficiency. And so not only in August and July are we using a lot of AC, but the panels aren't producing as much as they could. We hit 100%, brought that down a little bit to try and reduce the amount that we sent to the grid, but there's only so much you can do. Still wound up sending 16.9 kilowatt hours to the grid. And then here we have the 30th. Good sunny day, 61.8 kilowatt hours of production. Notes. 7 kilowatt hours for the vehicle. Nothing really to speak of here. And then our last day here. Starting off the day at 85, peaking. This day peaked, I think it was around, it wasn't even noon yet, it peaked. And this kind of sets us up for what we're going to expect in June. June is typically our highest production month. So, and again, no vehicle data for that day. I didn't have that added in yet. We'll get that next month. All right, well, that brings us to a close for May, and it was a great month of production. Very good month of production. And so we'll close this out here with just a quick frame showing the production numbers for the month in total, and we'll see you in a few days when we close out the first week of June.